Okay, so ready to dive into some really interesting research on emotional intelligence.
Absolutely tons here.
Yeah, you've sent over articles, studies. It seems like everything ever published on EI.
Well, I wanted to make sure we had plenty to unpack.
You really weren't kidding when you said deep dive.
Uh, Not at all.
Huh.
I think this is a topic that deserves a deep dive.
I totally agree, and I have a feeling we're going to uncover some fascinating insights along the way.
I think so too, especially when you start looking at EI in specific fields like healthcare.
Right, and that's actually what caught my eye in all of this research. It's one thing to talk about emotional intelligence in a general sense, but when you start to connect it to something as high stakes as medicine,
It really makes you think.
exactly like this article, the role of emotional intelligence in enhancing healthcare practice and professional well-being.
Oh, that's a good one. It really gets into the nitty-gritty of how EI impacts patient care.
Yeah, and it argues that high EI can lead to measurable improvements in things like stress management and decision-making, especially in those high-pressure medical environments like the ER.
Absolutely, and it's not just speculation either. There's a growing body of research that backs this up.
Which is amazing to me. You'd think in a field as technical as medicine, expertise would be the primary driver of success.
You would, but time and again, research is showing that EI is a critical factor.
And I think that speaks to the human element of healthcare. It's not just about understanding medical charts, it's about understanding people.
Couldn't agree more. And that's where EI comes in.
Totally. Like, how do you tell someone they have a life-changing diagnosis in a way
Right.
that's both honest and compassionate? How do you navigate those difficult conversations with empathy?
Those are skills that go way beyond textbook knowledge.
They can make all the difference for the patient.
Exactly. And it's not just about delivering news gently either. This study by Aurora and colleagues found that physicians with higher EI were actually better at recognizing and responding to their patients' unspoken needs.
Wow, think about how much that could improve diagnoses and treatment plans if doctors are more attuned to those nonverbal cues.
It's huge. And it makes you wonder if there's a measurable difference in, say, patient satisfaction scores between physicians with high and low EI.
Or even how quickly patients recover. Like, if you feel truly heard and understood by your doctor, wouldn't that impact your healing process?
That's a fascinating question, and it speaks to the potential of EI to transform not just individual interactions, but the entire healthcare experience.
And it's not just about bedside manner either, right?
No, not at all. Think about the ethically complex situations clinicians face daily.
Oh, absolutely. Like end-of-life care or experimental treatments with unknown outcomes.
Exactly. Those are weighty decisions. And while there's no easy answer, research suggests that EI can be a powerful tool in navigating those ethical dilemmas.
So clinicians with high EI might be better equipped to understand and empathize with the perspectives of everyone involved. The patient, their family, even the medical team.
Precisely. It allows for more nuanced and compassionate decision-making, which I think we can all agree is essential in those situations.
It's interesting, though, how this all comes back to empathy, doesn't it?
It really does.
Not just in healthcare, but in any field where you're dealing with people.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, you've also got some fascinating research here on EI and leadership. What's the connection there?
Well, you know how we talk about leaders setting the tone for a team?
Yeah.
It's not just about strategy and goals.
Right.
It's their emotional energy, too. It's almost primal how that filters down and influences everyone else.
Okay, I like that, emotional guides.
Yeah.
Because it's not about being happy-go-lucky all the time.
No, not at all.
It's about reading the room, understanding the emotional landscape, and then adjusting your own style to get the best out of your team.
Exactly. And this research actually delves into 6 different leadership styles.
Oh, wow. 6?
Yeah, there's visionary coaching, affiliative, democratic pace setting, and commanding. Each one has its place depending on the situation and the people involved.
So it's not like one size fits all.
Definitely not. But the interesting thing is that leaders with high EI, they tend to gravitate towards more collaborative styles even when there's conflict.
Okay, so break that down for me. What does that look like in action?
Let's say you're leading a team developing a new product.
Okay.
The visionary leader might inspire everyone with the big picture, right? The coaching leader might focus on individual development.
Yeah.
But the leader with high EI is going to be particularly adept at fostering collaboration and open communication.
They're the ones who can navigate those disagreements without things getting messy.
Exactly. They can ensure that everyone feels heard and valued even when the pressure is on.
Which, let's be real, is usually when those conflicts arise.
Right.
It's easy to be collaborative when everything's going smoothly.
Right.
But when deadlines are looming and resources are tight, that's when you need a leader who can manage not just the task at hand, but the emotional temperature of the entire team.
Absolutely. And that's a crucial point. Leaders with high EI are often incredibly skilled at creating what's called psychological safety within their teams.
Okay, what is that?
So it's basically fostering an environment where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing their ideas, and even voicing concerns without fear of being shut down or ridiculed.
Ah, I see. So it's about creating a space where vulnerability is welcomed.
Exactly. And that kind of environment, that's where innovation and creativity truly thrive.
It's funny because we often think of leadership as this very outward-facing thing.
Yeah.
You're leading the charge, setting the agenda, but what you're describing is almost like leadership starts by looking inward, by understanding your own emotions and how they impact the people around you.
Absolutely. And that brings us to one of the biggest challenges in the field of EI. How do you actually measure it?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not like an IQ test where you got a straightforward score.
Right. It's much more nuanced than that.
Right. It's like, how do you quantify something as fluid and dynamic as emotional intelligence?
It's a question that has puzzled researchers for a long time, and frankly, there's no easy answer.
Because even defining EI seems tricky.
Exactly. There are different models out there, each with its own perspective.
So are we talking about different ways to measure it?
That too, but also different ideas about what EI actually is.
Okay, so let's break that down. What are some of the main approaches?
Well, one camp views EI as an ability, kind of like cognitive intelligence, with IQ and all that.
So you'd measure it objectively.
Exactly. They use ability-based tests like the MSEET, where you're presented with different scenarios and you have to identify emotions, understand emotional cues, things like that.
So less about how you see yourself and more about how you actually perform on these emotional reasoning tasks.
Exactly. But then you have another school of thought that sees EI more as a personality trait.
Okay, so which one is it? An ability or a trait?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the truth is, it's probably a bit of both.
I was going to say, it's not that simple, is it?
No, it rarely ever is. But anyway, this other camp, they rely more on self-report measures like the EQI.
Which is it?
Basically, you rate yourself on different aspects of emotional intelligence, like how well do you handle stress, how good are you at reading other people's emotions, that kind of thing.
Oh, I've seen those kinds of questionnaires before.
Right. And of course, you have mixed models that try to combine both approaches, like the Emotional Competence Inventory, which uses self-assessments, but also gets feedback from people who know you well.
Interesting. So kind of a 360-degree view.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Each method has its limitations.
Yeah, I was going to say there's no such thing as a perfect measure, is there?
Not really. I mean, self-reports can be skewed by our own biases, right?
Yeah.
We might overestimate our abilities or downplay our weaknesses.
I think we've all been guilty of that at some point.
For sure. And then ability-based tests, while they seem more objective, can still be influenced by cultural norms and personal experiences. What I consider an appropriate emotional response might be very different from what you consider appropriate.
Absolutely. There's a lot of subjectivity there.
Exactly. So it's a complex landscape. But I think the takeaway is that even with these measurement challenges, the evidence is pretty clear. EI matters.
It impacts how we lead, how we collaborate, how we provide care, even how we navigate our own emotions.
And the good news is, unlike some other aspects of intelligence, research suggests that EI can be developed.
Oh, that's encouraging to hear. So it's not like you're stuck with whatever level of EI you're born with.
Exactly. There are programs and exercises and techniques that can help us become more emotionally intelligent.
So there's hope for those of us who might not be naturally gifted in the EI department.
Absolutely. We can all learn to better understand and manage our own emotions, to be more in tune with the emotions of others, and to use that emotional information to create more positive outcomes in our lives and our work.
That's a really empowering message to end on. And I think it speaks to the power of this deep dive into emotional intelligence. It's clearly a complex field with ongoing debates about definitions and measurement. But one thing's for sure, EI has a profound impact on our personal and professional lives.
It really does.
So as you go about your day, pay attention to those emotional currents around you. Notice how your own emotions shape your interactions, and observe how others respond to those emotional cues. Because the more we understand this powerful force within us, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the complexities of human connection. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into emotional intelligence.
It's been my pleasure.